All right, I think we're good to go. I want to welcome everybody to the Arpa Day Committee meeting for Tuesday, September 27th. As always, the rules of a public meeting. The meeting of the Arpa Day Transformational Committee are public meetings as defined by the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act and should follow these guidelines. As this public meeting is held virtually, it will be recorded and made available to view on the DDS website. Committee members must make a good faith effort to state their names and title, if applicable, each time they speak during the meeting. If a committee member would like to speak, please raise your hand and one of the co-chairs will acknowledge you. There is no public comment portion of this meeting. Members of the public are able to join, watch, and listen only. All right. Review and approval of the minutes of 9/13/2022. I believe I sent those out last Friday. Hopefully everybody got a chance to look at them. Is there any questions about the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor of approval of the 9/13 minutes? Say aye.
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 It's tough on these virtual meetings. All right, the minutes are approved. Okay, next, we're going to have a little presentation. Allie Small from Neva. I convinced her to give a presentation to you guys. So, I'll let her talk about Neva a little bit. Allie, you also came from Pennsylvania. I'm not sure if you're going to add a few comments about Pennsylvania in there too. So I'll just turn it over to you and you can kind of take over and lead the way through.
Very good. Well, thank you, Keith. Thanks, everybody. So yeah, Keith had a chat with me, I think for two reasons. One, because I'm the program director for Neva in Connecticut. Neva is a little unusual in that all Neva does is a focus on employment. The great majority of people that we serve are either currently employed or seeking employment. We are working with some people on some individual day types of activities, but all of those activities are work focused and work related. We don't really do any recreational types of activities or that sort of thing. So I think in that sense, it's a little bit unusual. Neva first started in Massachusetts, and for about the past 10 or 12 years, we've been doing some services in Connecticut. But I think because we have always been a more employment focused group, we've been able to spend quite a bit of time developing our toolbox and our menu to provide folks with what we hope is a nice variety of services. And Keith had asked if I might share some of those ideas with you, which I'm happy to do. If that, and in doing so, my hope is that it is a resource. It is maybe an opportunity to spark some ideas, some brainstorming. But what I really wanted to let you know is that for those of you who do work in programs that have larger day programs, whether they include sub-minimum wage work, or if they're more recreationally focused or what have you, I wanted you to know that I've been where you are because a number of years ago in Pennsylvania went through a transformation. And at the time, I was the director of both the employment program and our day programs. And at the time we had 3 large day programs serving about 350 individuals with over 100 staff. So I do have a very empathetic understanding for where people are who are working within day programs and have that responsibility, as well as taking a look at this transformation. So I just hope that this could be a resource. If any of you ever want to commiserate, have a cup of coffee, something else, I'm a phone call away. I'll meet you wherever you are, just so that we can talk through some things. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share a visual because I'm a visual learner myself. And with any luck, the technology gods will be on my side. And you all should be seeing a blue screen with white columns. Am I on target? Keith, can you give me a thumbs up? Am I good?
Yep, you're good.
Excellent. Thank you. So I can't see you guys at this point. So if you have questions and you raise your hand, fine. Keith, just give me the high sign that somebody has a question or a comment, if you would.
Yeah, I'll butt in.
Thank you. So what I did is I kind of created a long list of a wide variety of activities that we do with people aside from helping them in their jobs, which is a big part of what we do. And we do a lot of long-term support of people on the job. Some of it very intensive, some of it, you know, every single day. Yes, I heard a voice. Okay, or not.
If people can mute their mics, just so we don't get any background noises.
So yeah, quite a few, you know, a lot of our work is done helping people on the job site once they have their jobs. But a large part of what we do is about helping people to prepare for work, not necessarily in terms of skill building, because we honestly believe that everyone can work, everyone should be working. But preparing them in terms of having everything that they need at the ready for the onboarding process, for the hiring process with an employer. A lot of it has to do with related life skills. A good bit of it has to do with social and emotional types of opportunities, and then some technology supports that we provide. So I'm just going to go through these very quickly. Like I said, if it sparks any brainstorming or any other ideas, that's great. And if there are questions, let me know. So in the related life skills category, we help quite a few people prep for the written portion of the permit and driver's license testing. That has become something that we do rather often for quite a few of the folks that are referred to us, because we know that transportation is an ongoing challenge. And for some, not all, obviously, but for some folks, at least working towards that driver's license is an attainable goal. So we work with them on that. We work with quite a few people on addressing their budgeting skills. Whether they have a job currently or if they are working on having a job, because knowing how to manage your money is a big part of the equation. You know, ask any young person whether they have a disability or not. Budgeting is something that doesn't come naturally to most of us, and we usually learn by doing. So we spend quite a bit of time with that. Additionally, and related to, we spend quite a bit of time on financial literacy and financial goals. So I don't know about you guys, but I always say I never got a job so that I could add to the labor department statistics for adults of working age who are working, right? That isn't a reason to work. These data metrics are not a reason to work, but being able to save up for that Disney vacation that you want to go on every year is a reason to work, or a goal to work towards, or Being able to afford your own apartment or an apartment with a roommate is a goal worth working towards that work can help with. Being able to buy the newest kinds of clothes and the fashionable kinds of gear, the fit, as it were. You know, these are all things that some of our folks are very interested in doing. And so we help them to identify what those goals might be and then link them back to their jobs whenever possible. Helping them to set life goals and how to get there. Oftentimes people have goals that are difficult to talk about with family and friends. You know, that moving out, getting a job, being in an emotional relationship with others. These are all difficult topics to broach. So we do a lot of work helping people to identify those goals and how to get there. We spend quite a bit of time exploring transportation options. We know that transportation is never going to be perfect or anywhere near it probably, but we spend an awful lot of time working with individuals and their teams trying to figure out ways to get them to a job, but also so that they can get to the other kinds of things in the community and in their life that they want to participate in, but really struggle in doing. For some of our folks, we actually need to help them to explore their own dependent care needs and the supports that are available to them. Some of the folks that we work with have aging parents at home, and they have become a caregiver to them. Likewise, we do support people who have their own children, and they also need supports in order to be able to free themselves up so that they can go to work on a regular basis. So that's been something relatively new. You know, a couple years ago, we probably didn't have much of that, and that is something we spend a good bit of time on now. We work with people on wardrobe and hygiene. We do partner with Dress for Success, and that's been a really great tool to help folks to understand what to wear and when to wear things, and that's been very helpful. And then lastly, we do help people with groceries and food prep for meals that would be taken at work. So if somebody typically eats lunch at work, but struggles with groceries or food prep, we can certainly assist them with that so that they have the food and the wherewithal to pack the kinds of meals that they want to. I'm not going to say healthy meals because I know when I pack my lunch is not always healthy, but I do pack my own lunch. But we do help people to have the food on hand and prepare it so that they can have lunch to take. Any question on that column before I move on? Alrighty, I'll move on to the prep column. This one is probably pretty self-explanatory and could be things that you guys are already thinking about in terms of what might be options for your programs. We do a lot in the realm of resume development, and there was a time when a resume looked like, you know, your name and phone number and email address, center aligned with objective education experience underneath. But resumes have come a long way. We try and support folks to develop resumes that look like current resumes. A lot of them use color, a lot of them use different blocking, and we utilize that so that, you know, people's resumes look current. They look typical for the day-to-day. We can also help people who wish to have them create what is called a graphic resume, which is a resume that, as you would imagine, uses more graphics than words. And we can also help them to create a video resume. Now, a small caveat to the video resume, in order to do that, we need either the ability to take someone's photos and videos of that person at work, at play, doing different things in their lives, have them be willing to give a testimonial or connect us with others who are willing to give an on-camera testimonial. And that might sound daunting to some families, some individuals, in which case then the video resume probably isn't a great option for them. But for folks who like that idea, it has been really fantastic, particularly for folks who don't express themselves well, perhaps in an interview, for instance. A video resume can go a long way to bridging that gap so that a potential employer has a better understanding of who this person is and what they're capable of doing. We also work with individuals who would like to have a professional portfolio, but having a portfolio that you carry around to an employer, that's long gone. And then after that, there were the PowerPoint presentations. Well, now we've moved on to actually helping people to develop websites. And those websites help to tell their story, who they are as individuals, where their skills lie, where their experience is, what their hobbies and interests are. It can link to their resume. It can link back to social media. And for some of our folks, again, not necessarily folks who have a whole lot of work experience and who carry themselves really well and express themselves really well, but for people who have a hard time selling themselves, the professional portfolio website is helpful. We utilize Wix, that's W-I-X. It is free and fairly intuitive and easy to use. Again, another caveat is in order to develop that website, we do need access to videos, photographs, files that include people's recommendation letters or certificates of completion or awards. Those visuals are what really carry a website. We obviously do interview prep, which you guys are probably already thinking about, but we also do a lot in the way of mock interviews where we work with members of the public in order to expose sides of that table to something that might be different. So we would expose our customers, our job seekers, to a variety of different kinds of businesses and business professionals to practice their interviewing skills. But likewise, too, it also gives those business partners, those community stakeholders, the opportunity to interview somebody with a disability and have a sense for how that goes and what that feels like, so that they might be more readily available to be able to say yes to an interview for somebody that experiences a disability. We also do informational interviews, which is not necessarily job driven. So we're not seeking employment in informational interviews, but rather we are looking for information about a career, information about how somebody might access that kind of a career, what kinds of prerequisites are required. Is there any connections, networking that can be done that would help this individual? Right before I left Pennsylvania, we were working with somebody who experienced autism, but was a very talented artist, and they were very interested in self-publishing comics. Well, we knew nothing about self-publishing, so we did a lot of informational interviews with other self-publishers to have a better understanding of how that worked. So that just gives you an example of that. We work quite a bit on social media profiles. LinkedIn is key here. LinkedIn is the, as I'm sure you know, the premier social media platform for job seekers and for connecting job seekers with potential businesses. But that said, we also help with Facebook, Instagram. We have even started to dabble in TikTok for our folks who really enjoy video creation and getting information out about themselves in that way. We also work in circles of support, so helping groups rally around a person who is interested in a job. This diverse cross-collaborative group comes together maybe once a month, once every other month, and we all work at pieces of helping somebody to find employment in the community. We partner often with the American Career Centers, or no, I think here they're called American Job Centers. I think I got that wrong. Helping them to connect with whether it's classes or job fairs or different opportunities in their communities to connect with potential employers. And then last but not least, I think it's further down on the page. I don't know if I can scroll. I can. We also help people to access professional development classes and adult education that would help them to develop the kinds of skills that they want to develop that might connect them to new employment opportunities. And that's where we are on prep. Still doing okay? No questions, concerns? Have I lost everybody? I hope everyone isn't asleep quite yet.
No, you're good.
Okay. Going on to social. I put balloons up here because, I always think of social stuff as like parties with a purpose, right? A lot of our folks, particularly now after COVID, if they had social connections before COVID, oftentimes those social connections have been lost. Either groups have not reformed or people just kind of distanced themselves. Maybe they're a few years out of high school at this point. Maybe they had been going to a day program. That day program may be closed or was different and they're going somewhere else now. Who knows? But a lot of those social connections have been lost. So we have a focus on trying to help people to develop their own ties socially and emotionally, because we know that social capital is what keeps us all healthy, happy, and safe. So we want to help people to have the tools that they need to make as many social connections as possible. So we don't have these going right now. We're looking at resurrecting something we used to do in the past, group sessions, where we might offer a group session a few times a month and have them maybe be skill-based, and then have a fun activity as well to get people in the habit of doing that. We would like to offer some things in person, but we might also be offering some of these virtually just to help people who prefer that virtual access over in person. We are also always looking for opportunities to help our folks to network and to develop relationships in their own communities, develop their own social capital. And oftentimes what this means is going to the same place at the same time every week so that they can develop those natural relationships for people who are also there. So I always, there was a time, I don't do it anymore. I don't know if you guys can see this on camera. There was a time I actually used to get my nails done. I don't do it anymore. It's a waste of money, so I don't do it. But I did do it. And I had started going to a different salon in Pennsylvania, and I would go like every other Tuesday at like 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock or something like that. And I would go every single, twice a month, I would be there. And it took them almost a full year before they really knew me, how I like to have my nails done, my name, and all of that. It took almost a year because this social piece takes a very long time. So if we're working with somebody and we're helping them develop their own level of social capital, which is going to help them to eventually connect with jobs, connect with potential employers, connect with a network who's going to connect them to others, then we have to be willing to support them to show up at the same place at the same time, so that they can begin to develop those relationships with the natural people that are in those environments. And then lastly, we do help them to connect with a variety of support groups, and it depends again on who they are and what they're looking for, but anything from diabetes to Al-Anon to AA to epilepsy to Speaking for Ourselves and other self-advocate groups. We will help them to make those connections because again, those social connections help to feed the employment process. And then lastly, just briefly on technology, not everyone is into technology. Not everyone has a desire to connect in this way, but we have quite a few people who do. We do help them to utilize specific platforms. With Neva, we really like the platform called Life Sherpa, which is a versatile tool that can help with self-prompting, time management, project management, scheduling, emotional regulation, and has the added benefit of providing a lot of background data back to the organization, and also provides easy one-touch connections with supports. So we really like that. There are other platforms available. Avail is another one that is widely available. And for some people, they don't really want that whole platform. So instead, we help them to identify and access just apps that are available to all of us via our smart devices. We help them to utilize that. Maybe it's the notes page, maybe it's messaging, maybe it's using the photo capture feature so you can go in and look at your pictures. Maybe it's the voice memos. You know, there's a lot of apps available just on our smart technology or our smart devices that we can help people to access. We can help people with their own enabling technology. If there's somebody who wants added independence, whether it's at work or at home or in the community, maybe it has to do with medication. Maybe it has to do with daily schedules and routines. Maybe it has to do with having the ability to cook without the worry of accidentally leaving the stove on. Who knows? But there's lots of enabling technology that is out there. And we see that if people are working on overall independence, that will trickle over into the working world as well. And then basic computer skills. And in fact, we look for peers who have a lot of computer knowledge, who want to share that knowledge with others. And we try and set them up whenever possible to do peer-to-peer training so that someone else that we support can provide another customer, another job seeker, another supported employee to learn those skills. So that just kind of gives you an idea of some of the activities that we do beyond what might be considered the day-to-day norm of job placement and job support. Keith, I hope that was what you were looking for.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
If anybody has any questions, if you want to raise your hand. If not, I don't see any.
Keith, this is Catherine Dupree, your co-chair. So that was a really helpful conversation, Allie, and I was interested in the social connections and the networking that you do. And also if you find any difference in how the different states help you fund that or help you support all of your program goals. And since you've worked in at least Massachusetts and Connecticut in terms of this particular agency.
So I am not, I would say that I probably am more familiar with Pennsylvania than anywhere else. And Pennsylvania is a very different beast than what I have found here in Connecticut. But I've been here in Connecticut now since the beginning of July. So here's what I can say. I think that actually in Connecticut, we have a little bit more flexibility to provide a wider variety of supports to individuals who are interested in employment outcomes. So that's fantastic. I was very happy to see that. Back in Pennsylvania, we were relegated in employment to employment only. So there was very little flexibility that we had to dig into some of these other areas. Now, certainly, you know, we could make a case if they needed help with getting the right clothing for work, sure. But we would probably not be able to work for 3 or 4 months connecting them with Dress for Success, for instance. So in that sense, I think Connecticut is doing a fantastic job because what they realize is that employment does not fit in a 4-sided box. It is, and actually no services should, right? Because we are whole human beings with whole, you know, lives, and we don't necessarily like puzzle pieces, right? There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of areas that it's just gray. It's not, oh, this is day program and this is residential and this is work, because we're human beings and we're not designed that way. So I think Connecticut has done a really nice job in helping to make it a little bit more flexible in terms of what is identifiable as employment related supports. Now, I think that probably from a funding perspective, there are some things that we do that are not billable. The circles of support, for instance, that's probably something that overall is very little of what we do in that is not billable, but it sets up really high functioning cross collaborative teams that long term mean that we can get more people employed. We can get more people employed at high levels. We can get more people employed in some really creative kinds of ways. Maybe it's running their own business. Maybe it's managing a customized employment, a customized job. So in that sense, we feel that the end result ultimately is worth the non-billable time, but not everything is a fee for service kind of exchange. Did that answer that question, Catherine? And I really don't know. I don't know Massachusetts. Yeah, I don't really know Massachusetts. So Neva operates in Massachusetts, but I have not really operated there yet. I'm learning a little bits as we go.
No, that was helpful. I was just interested if there were things you saw in other places that we might learn from, but that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think I saw another hand raised, but I'm not
Yep.
sure. Oh,
Keith
Varian.
Lavalette, DDS. Varian, you're up.
Yeah, Varian Salter, self-advocate coordinator at DDS. Did you say you had a TikTok page? You said something
Sorry?
about TikTok. Did you say you had a TikTok page or?
We don't have a, so Neva does not have a TikTok profile. I'm gonna say yet. I don't know that we're gonna head down that route. I work a bit with Griffin Hammes. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Griffin Hammes. And they have certain staff who are very keen on helping people to identify TikTok as a tool for if they like that kind of content creation. And not everybody does. Some folks we support really prefer the Instagram type of options, but there are a lot, more and more people are accessing TikTok. There's a whole, for those of you who don't look at TikTok, there is a whole part of TikTok called Disability Talk, which is a whole variant. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it is an entire part of the platform that is content creators who all identify as having a disability. And through this platform, they tell their own story the way that they want to. It's sometimes thought-provoking and inspiring, and sometimes it's downright scary, and sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's celebratory and happy, and it is the whole scope of human emotion. But the important thing is that it is individuals with disabilities telling their own story, not having somebody else tell the story of people with disabilities. And as someone who doesn't experience an identifiable disability, I'm not going to comment on that. But I think that often, historically, people with disabilities, their stories have been told by others and not by themselves. I think that's phenomenal. And if we can help in any way to do more of that, then we're there for it. Did that answer your question, Varian?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions? Again, this is Keith Lavalette, DDS.
Well, thank you. And again, if I can be your help or a resource, or you just want to brainstorm, I would be more than happy to meet and chat. So thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Hey, just for attendance purposes, moving on, there are two phone numbers. If one of them happens to be a committee member, could you just announce yourself so I could take the proper attendance? Okay. Next, we have discussions from committee members on items identified by families or individuals that may interfere with moving to an alternative day setting. We understand money is the main factor. What other issues would or could get in the way? So I'm just wondering, we did have this on the agenda for the last meeting, and I'm just wondering if any family members would like to speak up today, or individuals. Not hearing any. Is there anything else that private providers would like to bring up? Okay. So I guess we've tackled that.
Yes.
Oh, Beth?
You're muted.
Beth Fisher Pune. Never mind, it is in the minutes. I was just thinking that the staffing the staffing shortages are affecting all of us and don't want us to lose sight of that. Yeah. I'll leave it there for today.
Okay. Thank you, Beth. All right, so the next agenda item is the Transformation Initiative in Deloitte Consultants. Again, I'm very happy to announce that Deloitte Consultants, they're a national consultant group. They have signed on with us for the next 20 or so months to do transformational work. So DDS is engaged with the Deloitte to assist in the research, development, communication, education, and implementation of the transformation process. So they're going to work with us across 5 phases. Their first phase is a project management phase. They're going to develop a work plan with timelines and startup activities. They're going to manage project activities against the agreed upon work plan through project duration. And their work products will include a project work plan, project governance structure, status reports, and a final project report. Then they're going to move in the assess phase, which is they're going to assess the current system, including exiting policies, reimbursement methodology, and service delivery plans. They're going to research up to 5 other states implementing transformational system change. They're going to gather stakeholder input. And their work products will include the current state review, stakeholder feedback summary, and the stakeholder summary. The design phase is they're going to design transformational options and assist the Arpa team on how they would fit into the DDS system. Assist DDS in selection of transformational options. Create an outcome-based incentive program with appropriate metrics. Develop transition plans focused on operational changes required for DDS to implement payment model changes. And their work products include option summaries and transition plans. Then they move into the plan phase. They're going to assist providers with organizational restructuring plans, develop an implementation work plan to guide the implementation of the transformational mode, create stakeholder communication plans, and the work products include the transformational plan template, guidance materials, implementation work plan, and communication plan. Then they're going to move to the implementation plan, and they're going to educate stakeholders, conduct virtual informational forums, and provide technical assistance. They're going to develop and conduct provider and DDS training and work the work products include the targeted educational materials, stakeholder summaries, training course outlines, and training course materials. So why they're doing this, you know, with this ARPA initiative and what we're doing right now is we need to begin this the day program incentives and moving those forward. So while Deloitte is moving through the process, we'd like to implement initial incentives and move those forward. And whatever providers would like to volunteer for that, we'd welcome that. So we'd work with the providers that are interested to move forward on the incentives. And then Deloitte will work on the whole transformational plan.
Keith, this is Jennifer from UCP of Eastern Connecticut. May I ask a question about that?
Yes.
So the incentives are the ones that were previously outlined in maybe the last two meetings and sent out in the PowerPoint. Are those the incentives that you're referring to?
Yes, they are. And actually, Peter Mason's going to come on in a few minutes, and we're going to go through the interim day incentives again, just so everybody understands what we're doing.
Okay.
And those
So
are
the sorry.
No, that's fine. So go ahead.
The incentives then they're temporary, right? They're intended to be short-term in nature.
Yes.
Which is fine. I, am not opposed to an incentive, but I don't think we can have transformation without some real plan for how it's sustainable in the future. So without a rate going forward past that incentive period, I don't know how transformation takes place. I'm concerned about that. Our staffing, it's an obstacle, but it requires a higher level of skill to work with someone in employment services than it does in a day program. And it's a one-to-one service, not a 3-to-1. So for that reason, while I think the incentive and the transformation is important and it's an excellent component, I think I'm very interested in Deloitte's role on research and coming up with a reimbursement rate going forward. But I think that needs to be a bigger priority than the incentives in the short term.
All right. Actually, if you guys could give me 1 second, let me run next door and see if Peter's available now. I think he is. But Beth, did you have the same type of question, or do you want to just wait 1 minute? And
Yeah, my question is similar, and I'm hoping maybe then Peter can answer that. But just quickly, we talked last time about all of these unresolved questions, and there were incentives tied to some of those. And the example that I remember most clearly was the whole notion about, do you get an incentive for placing a person, or are you going to put an artificial timeline to that? I certainly agree with Jennifer's comments about really needing to know what the rates are, but even in a temporary interim piece, I feel like there's all these unresolved pieces. And so I don't know if our feedback came back and you guys have made decisions around that. And that's what Peter's going to talk about. And if you want to, maybe we'll have more questions when Peter comes, but.
Well, let me see if I can get him on real quick, and that way we
Yeah. But what happened to our unresolved questions?
Right.
Thanks.
Tangled up here. He's coming on here in 1 second. You there, Peter? There he is.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey, Peter, how are you?
Good. How are we doing?
Hello.
All right, we were just about to get to the incentives, but we have a couple of providers with questions. Jennifer had a question. Did you want to repeat it?
Yeah, I don't know that it was a question as much as a statement about just the transformation process and the that it's a temporary incentive offered, and that there really needs to be a focus in order for true transformation to take place, to have, you know, funding that supports the long term. And so that was my point on that. And I'm looking forward to seeing what, you know, Deloitte's methodology is for that reimbursement, and looking at those states that have gone through that. I am a little bit familiar with Pennsylvania's pain in going through that process, and it was an extremely painful process for them. But also, you know, we've got staffing shortages and, you know, moving from a 3-to-1 to a 1-to-1. I think we really have to pay attention to that and the skill level that's needed. And so the long-term reimbursement rate needs to be figured out before we can move to even a short term. You know, we don't want to get into making change in the short term and then not being able to sustain it, because that's not truly transformation. So that was just my point there, that I don't want that to get lost in this. But, you know, Beth got me thinking too about in her previous comment about the method, the way we do incentives. You know, the ISE incentives are really cumbersome, to the point where one of my staff members said the other day, we don't even bother with that anymore. And, you know, we don't want to set this up with the incentives so that it's cumbersome like that. So I'm hoping that we can develop a plan here for the incentives that makes it simple and not complex. I think we're kind of getting that way too with assistive technology. Just I'll mention that. But certainly in this process, if we could have it streamlined and very straightforward, so there's not a lot more administrative work, that would be excellent.
Well, let me tackle the first part. So we are asking providers to go down this path. And rates, while those are an issue, are not something that the Arpa initiative is going to be tackling. And it is something that we will look at, but it's not something that is what we're tackling. And I understand that there's complexities here, and I understand that, you know, providers have a lot of issues, you know, staffing and all that kind of stuff. And I would love to wait to get to the perfect rate system. But by that time, I'll probably be dead, because we know that we've been working on this for years. And so, you know, we have to make sure that perfect isn't the enemy of good, and we need to be able to move forward. And I wish we had more time. We have been allocated this money in the FY23 and FY24 budgets. And we have an opportunity here for people to move from a congregate setting to a non-congregate setting. And we have money that we can use to assist with that. If we don't use that money, it's not going to be available after this. And so we're trying to see how we can maximize what we have. And what we're proposing at this point is to have Deloitte will be doing a transformational process plan, and we're nailing that down hopefully this week, so we can have some timelines for everybody. I don't want to issue that at this point, but in the meantime, those agencies that are willing to move forward within the current structure they'll be voluntarily, and they can do that if they choose. And we, we'll work with those agencies. And then once Deloitte's finished, then we will then have something more that we can go forward. The other complicating piece to this is DSS is going to be doing a rate study. I don't know when that rate study was supposed to start last year. I don't know when that's going to start. And we have to be careful we're not stepping on their toes as well. And so I have a conversation, I'm going to be starting the conversation with DSS in terms of where they are with this as well. So I think I hear what you're saying, and I get it. And if we could put this off, I would. We don't have that luxury. And so we either use this money or we don't. So, hopefully those agencies that feel that they can do it within the current structure will come forward, and those that want to wait till the Deloitte thing will have their choice to do that. But as I said, in terms of getting the rates perfect, I don't know any state that's got the rates perfect, and there's always going to be changes to those rates. And so, to hold off until that comes out, I just don't see that we would have that in a time period that will make it useful to maximize this money. In terms of the second piece, in terms of the incentives and stuff, yes, we have to figure out how to make that complicated, and having, this committee help us to do that will work. And, we'll be looking for those suggestions. We're trying to get there. Somehow, why it's so complicated, I haven't figured out. It just seems to be more complicated than it should be.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Beth Fisher, you have a question?
Hi, Peter. Beth Fisher, Kuhn Employment Opportunities. I think we appreciate, that the department is in a position that money has to be used now. I think what we're really saying is that if we truly want to see transformation, we don't, it's hard to know if these incentives are going to work in conjunction with the rates when we don't know what the rates are. I think that's a challenge. My question really ties to, you talked about the current structure. I mean, I'm not sure I'm clear what that current structure is. We had a lot of discussion in the last meeting about all of these questions to be resolved. And as far as I'm aware, I don't really see any resolution to these questions. So I'm not sure, honestly, what that structure is. So perhaps that's something you're going to share a little bit more. One example that came up the last time, Peter, was that if somebody is placed in a job, some of us feel strongly that that provider should get the incentive regardless how long that they stay, where others think that there needs to be some kind of an artificial benchmark. Success is going to be measured differently for different people. So, in my mind, that's just one of several unresolved questions.
Well, I think Beth in our current employment structure, the way it's supposed to work is if you get a job, if you find a job for the individual, there's a benchmark for that.
That's true.
If they've been there for 3 months, there's a benchmark for that. If they've been there for 6 months, there's a benchmark. So I'm not too sure what's happening, but that's what it's supposed to be. In terms of the Arpa incentives, that's not part of the Arpa incentive.
So Beth Fisher Kuhn, I guess maybe I'm confused then. So are we saying that when we transition somebody from GSE to ISE that we're using those same benchmarks that are currently in place? Because it's been listed here as an unresolved question. So I'm confused by that. And I
so
also
the incentive is to provide additional money through the hourly rates. We have benchmarks out there, so this is working. The ARPA money is to be used within our current structure. So if an individual is going from GSE to ISE, they will receive the ISE amount plus $71.50 for every hour that you're billing ISE for. So it's not based on whether they're have achieved their job or not. It's just that you're getting that as the incentive to move forward. In addition, you would be then eligible for the benchmarks. Those would be in there.
Well, thank you, Beth Fisher from CUNY. I mean, that makes sense. I guess then I just don't understand why the question here, how long does someone need to stay in this new setting? Why that's listed as an unresolved question in our PowerPoint.
And I think part of that is, let's say someone does it for 2 months, goes back to GSE, then they're 2 months again, and they go back to GSE. How long are we going to keep doing this? That's the thing that we're trying to figure out. What are the guardrails so that individuals are going into a position that will be beneficial to them, and that sometimes if it doesn't work, that's great, but we're just trying to figure out that we don't give incentives for people to keep going back and forth.
So just to clarify, Beth Fisher from CUNY. So what I'm hearing then is that for the GSE to ISE transition, it will be the existing ISE benchmarks will be what is going to be used.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Catherine?
Sorry, I had to go off mute. So I would say two things. I do think that the rate structure probably has to be looked at, but the rate structure is in place for ISE support. And these really are extra incentives for a very small percentage of the people in DSOs or GSEs, I think, to move on. Hopefully, we will be able to try it out and see if it's useful. I think that the providers who talk about the bureaucracy and the difficulty with the existing individually based incentives around ISE have a very strong point. There's been a sound committee that's been working on that. It might be helpful for us in the future to hear from that committee and see if we feel that the recommendations they're making are going to be helpful, and where are they in terms of implementation.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Jennifer, do you have another question?
I do. Yes, thank you. Jennifer from UCP of Eastern Connecticut. So Peter, in regard to, some guardrails on people going back and forth from one program to another, I don't know how we can be person-centered and not allow for that kind of activity, for them to be successful, in a job for a couple of months, and then maybe need some more support in a day program setting or in a GSE or something like that. I just think that to put those kind of guardrails on it is not beneficial to the individual, and again is one of those things that kind of complicates the process unnecessarily.
Well, and that's one of the reasons we're looking for feedback, is we want to hear this. The initiative is to see if we can incentivize individuals to move out of congregate settings. And if it takes a couple times, I don't think that's an issue. I mean, I think the question was there not as a black and white thing. It was, spurring conversation as to what that should be. Should there be, what that should be, and if it was, how to do that. I think that's the reason we put that out there, was just to get those conversation going.
Yeah, this is Jennifer again. Yeah, I agree that this conversation is necessary, and I can't stress enough that, you know, the individuals have achieved success at different rates and at different times, and there are so many factors that come into play, and there should be an option at all times for them to move from one setting to another that meets their needs. And I think the providers aren't necessarily the barrier to that. I think there's an implication that the provider is a barrier to that. Sometimes staffing is a barrier, but you know, the incentive is for the provider, which I appreciate, but oftentimes it doesn't have to do with the provider, whether or not an individual is, you know, successful in a job. And success, by the way, could be they've never had a job and they go for one day. That's a success. So I want to see that continue for the people that we support, and hope that they, you know, are able to have those achievements and earn a fair paycheck and find success in their own way. But I don't want to see barriers and guardrails put up that make things more complicated or restrict them in any way.
Understood.
All right, why don't Keith Lavalette, DDS, let me share my screen. And, oh, Beth, did you have another question before?
A comment, I guess. I think, you know, the barriers and the complication are a real challenge. And, you know, Jen is right when she said that it's, you know, not always the provider that is the barrier. There are so many other factors. But I can't stress enough that whatever we do, we have to find a way to streamline and simplify, whether it's the payment, whether it's allowing people to move in and out of the services that they need, because that really becomes a problem when you don't have that flexibility to be able to meet the person's needs. And I know that there was a great presentation earlier by Allie, and she talked about some of the great things that you know, her agency does to make people successful. Well, you know what, we do all of those things, but we do them more so in our mental health funded programs because we have greater flexibility. We're not in a position to provide unbillable services. So just to kind of keep that in mind as we move forward. Thank you.
This is Peter Mason. When you say unbillable services, can you explain what that means?
Beth Fisher from CUNY. Well, I don't want to repeat Allie's presentation, but things like, you know, some of the more, you know, social case management kinds of activities with people, you know, to get them ready to go do a job. So yeah. Okay.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Catherine, is your hand raised again, or are you?
Yes, sorry.
Okay,
Catherine Dupree, co-chair. So I think that there is already a flexibility in our system to address people's needs individually. People do move back and forth between programs. People have different levels of success rates or different time of their success. But these are incentives to get people employed. We are not ahead as a state for people who are in individualized supported employment. And we are all funded to do that kind of work. We're all and we may need different rates, but we're all funded to already address people's needs individually. I think the incentives have to be looked at to reach actual performance outcomes and goals that the department expects.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Peter, I'm going to share my screen and get that up on. Find it here. Could everybody see that? Peter, do you see that?
I can see it.
Okay, good. Peter, I can't see if people raise their hands, so if you could just monitor that. But what we have here is the if a provider requested hours for placement of 300 hours, currently they would get $55 an hour for a total amount of $16,500. The incentive there, again, the incentive rate is $71.50. So times the 300 hours, their incentive amount would be $21,450. So they'd get that amount along with the $16.50 for their total payment of $37,950.
And this is Peter Mason, and this is, I'm trying to, we're trying to do this balanced approach. You know, we need to make it simple that our current benchmarks are not easily accessible. And hearing Catherine say, you know, looking at outcomes, and we have Beth Fisher make it simple. You know, at this point, we've tried to make it on the simple part and adding this just to the hourly rate. So when you bill, that you'll get that instead of saying, here's the incentive, you know, if the person's employed, we're going to give you X, Y, Z. Because it seems like we've done that and it's been more, it's become more of an issue in terms of trying to access those benchmarks. And so we've done it this way. Here's, you know, so you're not applying for additional dollars. It will be part of the authorization. If you have an approved transitional plan, this will be part of the authorization for those individuals. And as such, we've also done it. The reason we've done it in an hourly rate fashion as well is that we look at that, you've provided a service, so now you've performed that service. We'll pay you for that service. So that money then is outside of the OPM cost standards, is the providers to use as they see fit. So it's not going to be, you have to use this money X, Y, Z. This is, you've provided the services, and so here's the money for that service.
Keith Lavalette, DDS.
I have there's two hands now.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Peter Mason. Beth Fisher.
Beth Fisher, CUNA Employment. Peter, you know, I appreciate that that there aren't going to be a lot of strings attached to this money. Maybe there's no answer to this question yet, but does that mean that it won't be part of an, I'll use cost settlement for lack of a better term, because I know the traditional cost settlement's going away, but it's still, you know, would potentially be a surplus that we would have to get approval how we would use that to reinvest in our agencies or our services moving forward. So are you saying that money would would be separate and distinct from any kind of end of year reporting?
It would be, you would be subject to the OPM cost standards and whatever guidelines they have for surpluses.
So even though it's outside of the OPM point of service contract. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Was there another question, Peter?
I think the hand went down unless, came back up. Go ahead.
Sorry, Jennifer from UCP of Eastern Connecticut. That was exactly my question regarding cost settlement. And, you know, if we, for example, needed to use it for rent, that wouldn't be an issue. But I just see with the OPM cost standards that maybe there might be some strings actually attached. So, but thank you.
We have to live within the confines of our structure. Peter Mason.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. So the next category is if full-time DSO to a full-time ISC. Again, if the requested hours from the provider were 300 hours, the ISC rate is $55. So the amount would be $1,650. The ARP incentives, again, the $71.50. The incentive amount is $21,450. Total payment is $37,950. We've also considered, moving from a full-time DSO to a full-time GSE. Here we took LON 3. Full-time is 30 hours a week times the 1676, which is the LON rate. So their maximum authorization is 22,626. The GSE annual authorization is the same amount. So the ARPA initiative incentive would be the rate over a 4-month period or 75 days. So the incentive would be $7,542. Peter, do you want to take this one? This is the
Sure.
part-time.
So this is looking at the going from a GSE and going into ISE on a part-time basis and still keeping some of their GSE hours. This is if an individual is getting 20 hours and still wants to have GSE for a couple of hours a day or a couple of days. They'll be able to, with 11 hours for the week, the GSE 4, the support rate's 1844, so their maximum annual authorization for that would be 10,547. In terms of, there'd be no ARPA initiative for them to stay within the ISE. And that's just where they are. But to be moving into the ISE piece of it, their maximum annual authorization would be the 5 hours because it's a LON 4. The support rate's 55, so their maximum annual authorization would be 14,300. But during the placement, so that they need 300 hours to help place them into that position, they would get their regular $55 as 16,500. But in addition, they'd get the 7150 over and above that for an additional 21,450. So in that total time period for that year, they would end up with 64,998, and that's how that would work out. So, we're trying to move this forward for everybody, and so we're trying to give as many options as we can in terms of full-time to full-time, the dual programs, and working out that way.
Okay, and Keith Lavalette, DDS. This is a slide that we just wanted to show again. Again, this is basically a moving on incentive that we didn't want people to forget about. But if a person was a LON 5 and moving out of a congregate setting, that they'd receive the moving out incentive of the $9,036.
Keith, this is Catherine Dupree, co-chair. Jennifer's had a question for a while.
Thank you. This is Jennifer, UCP, Eastern Connecticut. Just going back to your the top section there. In my experience, people don't typically move from a DSO to an ISE. They don't typically move from 30 hours of support to 5 hours of support. So I think one of those unanswered questions was, is IDV and transition, are those services included in this incentive? So I don't see those listed there. It seems like we're trying to move people from 30 hours to 5 hours or from 11 to 5. But I guess so. I'd like to
In
see
that,
those
I-
questions resolved
Well,
before.
yeah, well, this
we
is
get
Peter
into
Mason.
the
Yeah, this is
nitty-
Peter Mason.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of this, this example, and of course, it's just an example and they're all over the place, so we had to choose something. But in this example, they should be working 20 hours. And the 5 hours that they're getting is the follow-on to help them maintain their job. In addition, they're also having 11 hours in GSE. So if you look at it, it's actually, there's 31 hours that they're, you know, there's 20 hours they're in the community and 11 hours they're on a GSE. So I think you have to be careful in terms of, you know, we're not looking at doing a one-to-one for everybody in every job that they're at. It's what are the support needs that they have.
Again, in my experience doing this, we've never had anybody move from a 30-hour DSO to a 20-hour job. It's more of a process than that, but you know, perhaps with these incentives, we can make that happen.
I see, this is Peter Mason. I see Beth Fisher's hand up.
Thank you, Peter. Beth Fisher from Hygiene. I just want to clarify, the 20 hours of work, is that just in that example? That's not,
just in that, yeah, that's just in that example. Yeah,
So
because you
for-
can't hit every example.
right, but just for the minimum, I mean, there's no minimum number hours worked in ISC if somebody moves into ISC in order to get the incentive payment. So somebody could work 5 hours a week and get it.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Are there any other questions?
This is Peter Mason. I know we're hearing a lot from a couple people. Is other people out there? Do you have any comments out there in terms of this?
Keith Lavalette, DDS. I see no questions at this point. So, Peter, do we need a motion to pass the interim rates?
So,
how-
I don't know what was said before, so I'll say it again, unfortunately. So what we're looking at, as I said, there's going to be two pieces to this. There's, you know, while we wait for Deloitte, we're looking at establishing a voluntary process for everybody to anybody who wants to move forward with this within the current structure. And at that point, what we're looking at is, you know, using these as interim incentives. When Deloitte finishes theirs, that they'll be making recommendations to DDS. When that's accepted, then we'll bring that out. And at that point, then we'll be going back out to the providers and then redoing the incentives. What I will say about that is that the incentives have been based on a movement of 200 individuals. And once that goal has been reached, if it gets reached, at that point, then the amount that there won't be any additional money in terms of incentives as part of the Arpa initiative. Now, DDS may want to continue that, but we're not at this point. It could be that we get very little, so those incentives would need to be increased. It could be we get more people than we think, and those incentives would be decreased in order when we move to the next place. I just don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But the right now, what we're looking for from the committee is to move forward with these incentives on an interim basis. So anybody who wants to voluntarily move forward with this, they should have the chance while we wait for Deloitte to complete their process.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the interim rates as presented?
This is Cynthia D. Louise, DDS. I'll move to accept the rates as presented.
Thank you, Cynthia. All in favor? Any nays?
I'm a nay. This is Jennifer from UCP.
Okay. I'm hearing somebody typing. Is that?
I'm sorry, I'll put myself on mute. This is your co-chair, Catherine Dupree.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Capture the motion.
And this is Beth Fisher from CUNY. I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you. So hearing that, the motion does pass. And we have one more question. Hold on. I guess we don't. I don't see it. So, all right. Is there anything else for the good of the committee?
It looks like Susan Bastian has her hand up.
Oh, Sue, okay. I didn't see that. Go ahead, Susan.
Hi, this is Sue Bastian, parent, member of the RAC West. A concern that I have is wondering for the clients who are chosen to move out into the community and who will need support from staff, where this staff is coming from. In other words, are new staff being hired, or will they be pulling staff from the day program, which will leave the day program even shorter with staff than they already are?
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Each provider that comes up with that's looking to become part of this incentive plan they will have to develop a plan going forward, and that would have to be accepted by the regions in the state. So moving forward, they'd have to provide a plan that's acceptable. So by reducing their day program staff, I don't think that is something that would be looked at, I guess is the best way to put it.
And the idea is that, this is Peter Mason, the idea, and this is all theoretical, and I know I'm not out on the front lines, but the idea would be, you know, if a provider was looking at, they have 4 people on a GSE crew and they want to move all 4 of those individuals into ISE, that they would do that over a number of months. They wouldn't do it all at once. They'd do it over a number of months. And DDS would be able to provide the funding for the individual that's being moved, that's moving out into the community. But at the same time, they would be reimbursing the provider for each individual that's moving out. So they're trying to keep the fiscal stability so that there hopefully would be additional resources that they could use if they can, as hire additional staff to do this, even if it's on a temporary basis until that crew ends up all of them out, and then they have a staff then that they could then use elsewhere.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Thank you, Peter. Are you all set, Susan, or is your hand is still raised?
It's still raised. Oh, I don't know how to take it down then.
Oh, that's okay then. No problem. All right, everyone. Our next meeting is October 11th. Thank you for your participation today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.